Welcome to our short video. Let's dive right into this fascinating world of foreign direct investment, or FDI as it's commonly known. You know, if you've ever wondered how countries grow their economies or how businesses spread their wings across borders, FDI is often the secret sauce. It's like that friend who shows up at a party with a bunch of cool gadgets and ends up making everything more exciting. In simple terms, FDI happens when a company or an individual from one country invests in a business or sets up operations in another country. And it's not just about throwing money around, it's about building something lasting, like factories, offices, or even acquiring stakes in existing firms. This isn't your quick stock market flip. It's a commitment that can reshape economies and open doors for businesses to expand globally. Picture this. A tech giant from the United States decides to build a manufacturing plant in Vietnam. That's FDI in action. According to sources like Investopedia, FDI involves buying a significant, lasting interest in a foreign company, often meaning at least 10% ownership or control. It's different from portfolio investments where you're just buying shares without getting involved in the day-to-day. And why does this matter? Well, in the grand scheme of global economic development, FDI acts as a bridge between rich and poor nations, transferring not just capital but also knowledge, technology, and skills. It's like a global knowledge-sharing party that helps developing countries catch up faster. Now, let's talk about how FDI fuels economic development. Imagine a developing country like India or Brazil, where local industries might be struggling with outdated tech or limited funds. When foreign investors pour in money to set up operations, they create jobs, lots of them. The OECD highlights how FDI is at the heart of globalization, transferring capital, goods, services, and information across borders. In fact, studies from the IMF, like one from back in 2001, have been pondering just how beneficial this is for developing countries. The verdict? Pretty darn beneficial, especially when it comes to boosting GDP growth. FDI can increase productivity because foreign firms often bring in advanced technologies and management practices that spill over to local businesses. Think about it conversationally. You're a local entrepreneur in a small town, and suddenly a multinational corporation sets up shop next door. They might train your workers, share supply chain tricks, or even buy from your suppliers, lifting everyone up. A Science Direct Article 1 came across talks about how sector-specific FDI, in areas like manufacturing, services, or agriculture, can have targeted effects on economic growth. For instance, FDI in the secondary sector, think manufacturing, often leads to industrialization, which is a game-changer for countries trying to move from agriculture-based economies to more diversified ones. But it's not all smooth sailing. FDI's role in development isn't automatic, it depends on the host country's policies. If a government has strong education systems and infrastructure, the benefits multiply. Otherwise, it might just create enclaves of wealth without broader impact. The World Bank blogs about this elusive link between FDI and growth, noting that while global value chains have changed the game, not every investment leads to massive growth. Still, on average, countries that attract more FDI see faster economic expansion. Take China, for example. Its explosive growth over the past few decades is partly thanks to massive FDI inflows, turning it into the world's factory. Shifting gears a bit, let's chat about business expansion. From the perspective of the investing company, FDI is like planting seeds in new soil to grow your empire. Why stay confined to your home market when you can tap into emerging ones? Businesses use FDI to access cheaper labor, new customers, or natural resources. A Wikipedia entry mentions how in 2008, a Federal Reserve study showed that countries with less developed financial markets invest more in places like the US. But the reverse is true too. US firms invest abroad to diversify and expand. Imagine you're running a car company in Germany. Setting up a plant in Mexico via FDI means you can produce closer to the North American market, cut shipping costs, and maybe even dodge some tariffs. This is business expansion at its core. The Atlantic Council discusses how attracting FDI is key for countries to boost competitiveness, but for businesses, it's about strategic growth. McKinsey's recent insights from 2025 point to a FDI shakeup, where announced projects are signaling shifts in global trade patterns. With geopolitical tensions and supply chain disruptions, companies are rethinking where they invest, often nearshoring, to closer allies. One cool aspect is how FDI promotes innovation. Foreign firms bring R&D capabilities that local companies can learn from. VoxDev's literature review on FDI and development emphasizes how multinationals at the core of global supply chains accelerate progress in low-income countries. They don't just create jobs, they foster innovation through linkages with local suppliers. For example, in the auto industry, a foreign investor might demand higher standards from local parts makers, pushing them to innovate and improve quality. Of course, we can't ignore the downsides. Sometimes FDI can crowd out local businesses if they're not competitive enough. There are also concerns about environmental impact, especially in extractive industries. The UNCTAD report from 2024 talks about global economic fracturing and shifting FDI patterns, noting a 2% drop in global flows in 2023 due to economic slowdowns and tensions. But even with that, sectors like autos and electronics saw growth in FDI, showing resilience. Let's get a bit more personal. Suppose you're an investor eyeing opportunities abroad. What draws you in? Tax incentives, stable politics, skilled workforce, these are magnets. Governments worldwide compete to attract FDI, offering perks like special economic zones. The University of Sunderland explains FDI as a stake in a foreign business, which can be horizontal, same industry, or vertical, supply chain integration. This expansion helps businesses scale, diversify risks, and access new markets. Diving deeper into economic development, FDI often leads to technology transfer. Local workers get trained on cutting-edge tech, and over time, that knowledge spreads. A classic study from 1998 in the Journal of International Economics tested FDI's effect on growth across countries and found positive links, especially when the host country has a certain level of human capital. It's like upgrading your phone, suddenly you can do more. In terms of job creation, the numbers are impressive. White House data from 2011, as cited in Wikipedia, showed 5.7 million U.S. workers employed in FDI-dependent facilities, with higher than average pay. Flip that to developing countries, and it's even more transformative. FDI can reduce poverty by creating employment and increasing wages. But hey, let's not forget the global picture. The OECD provides guidelines for measuring FDI, ensuring comparable data worldwide. This helps policymakers track trends and make informed decisions. In 2023, despite a dip, FDI in critical minerals and value chain-intensive manufacturing rose, per Congress reports. This ties into sustainable development. FDI can fund green projects, like renewable energy plants in Africa. For businesses, expansion via FDI means building global brands. Think Apple manufacturing in China or Tata from India investing in UK steel. It's a two-way street. Emerging market firms are increasingly investing abroad too, like Chinese companies in Europe. Challenges? Sure, currency fluctuations, political instability, or regulatory hurdles can bite. The IMF's 1999 piece on FDI in developing countries warns of potential imbalances if not managed well. Yet, the pros often outweigh the cons. Looking ahead, with 2025 insights from McKinsey, FDI is reshaping industries. Geopolitical shifts might lead to more regional investments, like U.S. firms pulling back from distant spots to Mexico or Canada. This could accelerate development in those regions while challenging others. FDI is a powerhouse for both economic development and business growth. It connects the world, drives progress, and opens endless possibilities. If you're thinking about investing or just curious, keep an eye on trends. They're evolving fast. So, let's keep rolling. Have you ever thought about how FDI started? It's not a new concept. Back in the colonial days, European powers invested in plantations and mines abroad, but modern FDI really took off post-World War II with the rise of multinationals. The Bretton Woods system and institutions like the IMF helped stabilize the global economy, making cross-border investments safer. Fast forward to today, and FDI is a trillion-dollar game. According to UNCTAD, global FDI flows were around $1.3 trillion in 2022, with fluctuations. But what drives these flows? Demand for resources, market access, efficiency gains. The Dunning's eclectic paradigm explains it well, combining ownership, location, and internalization advantages. Conversational twist. Imagine you're a CEO deciding where to invest. Ownership advantage? Your brand or tech. Location? Cheap labor in Southeast Asia. Internalization? Better to own than outsource to avoid leaks. In developing countries, FDI's role in poverty alleviation is huge. By creating jobs, it increases household incomes, classes, stimulating consumption and further growth. A Science Direct paper from 2022 analyzed sector-specific impacts, finding that tertiary sector FDI services boosts growth in urban areas, while primary, agriculture, mining, aids rural development. Let's take real examples. Ireland's Celtic Tiger boom in the 90s was fueled by FDI from tech firms like Intel and Google, drawn by low taxes and educated workforce. It transformed Ireland from one of Europe's poorer nations to a high-income one. Similarly, in Africa, FDI in mining and telecom has been pivotal. Nigeria's oil sector attracts billions, though it comes with environmental costs. The key is balancing growth with sustainability. For business expansion, FDI allows firms to bypass trade barriers. Instead of exporting, you produce locally. This is especially true in the EU, where intra-regional FDI is massive. Risks include expropriation, governments seizing assets, but that's rare now with bilateral investment treaties protecting investors. On the innovation front, FDI brings spillovers. Local firms imitate foreign tech, hire trained workers, or form joint ventures. Harvard Business School research on FDI and finance shows how foreign ownership helps firms weather crises better due to better access to capital. In the context of global value chains, FDI integrates countries into production networks. A car might have parts from 10 countries, coordinated by multinationals. Current trends. With climate change, green FDI is rising, investments in solar, wind, EVs. The OECD's work on sustainable investment emphasizes this. Geopolitically, US-China tensions are redirecting FDI. Companies are diversifying away from China to Vietnam or India, per McKinsey's 2025 report. For small businesses, FDI can mean acquisitions or partnerships, expanding reach without starting from scratch. Challenges in measurement. The OECD sets standards, but conduit economies like the Netherlands skew data, as funds pass through before final destinations. Policy implications. Governments should focus on ease of doing business, education, and infrastructure to maximize FDI benefits. Future outlook. As per VoxDev, MNEs will continue driving development, but with scrutiny on labor standards and environment. Wrapping up? Not yet. Let's explore types of FDI. Greenfield, new facilities, versus brownfield, acquiring existing. Horizontal versus vertical. Each has different impacts on development. For instance, greenfield FDI creates more jobs but takes time, while mergers bring quick tech transfers. In terms of economic models, the solo growth model incorporates FDI as capital inflow, boosting per capita income. Empirical evidence. Borenstein et al.'s 1998 study found FDI contributes to growth more than domestic investment when human capital is sufficient. Critics argue FDI can lead to dependency, with profits repatriated, not reinvested locally. Balance of payments issues arise if outflows exceed inflows. Yet, many countries like Singapore have thrived on FDI-dependent models. Conversationally, if you're a policymaker, attract FDI with stable rules, not just incentives. For businesses, due diligence is key. Understand local laws, culture. In sum, FDI is a dynamic force shaping our world. It's not perfect, but its role in development and expansion is undeniable.